Good afternoon, everyone. It's Tuesday, and so it's Livestream Tuesday. Welcome. And in today's live stream, we're going to talk about a crypto that is, fallen off the map a little bit. Elon's been quiet. Crypto market is still in what's that in between world? Purgatory. That's the right word. Purgatory. Not yet in a crypto summer or bull market. But today we're going to do something that I think most serious crypto analysts would not consider, which is actually looking at hey, let's look at Dogecoin seriously. Right? I mean, how many times have you seen an actual analysis of Dogecoin? Not where somebody says to the moon or shows you the picture of that adorable dog. No, hey, I mean, it is a it's a currency. It is a investment, depending on how you want to think about it. And there is a way to analyze it and think about it where you can make a logical case for it, a case based on facts, on evidence. And that's what we're going to do in today's live stream. I'm going to make my case for Dogecoin. And if you look at where Dogecoin is right now, I mean, it tells you there's a certain relationship that Dogecoin has. I'm just not happy with where I am on my screen. So I'm trying to find the middle point, but I'm still not completely happy here. So I keep twiddling around. Okay, let me do all the usual things, and then we'll get to what I was talking about, which is the relationship between Dogecoin and Bitcoin. All right. All right. Legal disclosure, which is that this live stream and the content from ATG Digital is not investment or financial advice. It is presented to you as opinion, information, engagement, and entertainment. Next, all ATG Digital content may contain errors, oversights, or mistakes. In other words, it's not, word from above. Do your own work. Do your own due diligence. Go and fact find on your own. Challenge it in some ways. I mean, heck, question me. I mean, it's always actually refreshing for me if somebody asks me a real question based on hey, I saw this, because then I get even greater understanding. So go look at stuff for yourself. Understand that investment operations, which is what? Well, buying or selling Dogecoin, any stock, any of the options that we do, have significant risks and can lead to the loss of your principal. What's loss of your principal? Losing money. Next, I, the owners, employees, contractors, own, trade, and transact the securities I mentioned in this video, and all the content from ATG Digital. That includes, obviously, the trades, the updates, the Substack, everything. Next, we do not take money from companies or crypto to recommend their stocks or crypto tokens. Somebody asked me why I was reading this, because one of the things that's happened in the last 4 or 5 years, especially with so many more people joining and investing on their own, is that companies are trying to reach out to individual retail investors. And one of the ways that they can do it is obviously to pay people like me to talk about particular stocks or crypto to folks like you, or to maybe even, recommend them. So I want to make it clear, for better and for worse, for gain and for loss, whatever we do is based on our own independent judgment, research, experience, etc. And then this is all the stuff we publish fairly regularly: Substack daily, podcast intermittently, and YouTube. I'm on here, I think, pretty much every week. Should probably maybe take a break or two from here or there, which I might at the end of this year, where I'm planning some travel plans. And then social media, definitely we're most active on X. Instagram is inactive mostly, and Facebook is semi-active, depending on what's going on in the markets. Dean is often putting up pretty neat memes and stuff to keep all of the folks engaged on there. And then, of course, we have our business where you can subscribe. We have 4 different tiers, not tiers from the eyes, tiers in terms of levels. And the cheapest one begins at $9.99 per month. Okay. Now I've talked, I think like last week, I talked about MicroStrategy. And by talking about it, I also talked about Bitcoin. And today I want to talk about Dogecoin. Dogecoin is, I've never really seen an analysis of Dogecoin, probably because people will feel kind of stupid and dumb to analyze a meme coin. I mean, a token, a coin that was started as a joke and with no serious intent behind it, but yet, I mean, has continued to be alive, not just stay alive. I mean, Dogecoin has a market capitalization of $15.6 billion. That's not a joke. $15.6 billion. If you'd put a lot of money into Dogecoin pretty early on, and I always thought of Dogecoin as being truthfully like most people maybe still think about it today as like a joke, but it wasn't a joke in the last crypto bull market, was it? When it mooned from, I mean, what did it do? Let's look at the like if I put up a chart. This is the all-time chart. Okay, yeah, it went from what, like yeah, less than a cent, right? Well, yeah, in 2020 went from like less than a cent to 74 cents. Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, I mean, even now, if you bought like obviously for less than a cent, it's at like almost 11 cents. It's still worth. So why? Like, why has this persisted? Like, why has this like? I mean, there are so many other more serious coins that were started with some specific purpose, like clones of Bitcoin that have started to, fall off the map. Like, I mean, in 2016, 2017, Litecoin was actually like seen as like, hey, this is a investable token. Bitcoin Cash. I mean, and all the other, so many different variants. But Dogecoin, I mean, is still what? Let's go back here. It is the 8th highest token in terms of market capitalization. And really, it is, for practical purposes, at least from the way I look at it, it's really the 7th because Tether is a stable coin, and that's essentially like cash. And I wouldn't count that necessarily. And BNB, which is the Binance coin, is like, that only trades on Binance. So, I mean, I maybe kind of like sets that aside as like a special consideration. Oh, and there's USDC. So really, for all practical purposes, it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, XRP, and then the next big one is Dogecoin. So through 15 years of the crypto market, Dogecoin has survived. It has also, importantly, in every Bitcoin bull market since its founding, Dogecoin has made new highs. I mean, right? I mean, let me put that chart back up of Dogecoin, right? I mean, this is one day, but let's look at, this is the all-time. So, I mean, you can barely see it here, but you can see a new high in Dogecoin in post the 2016 halving, and post the 2020 halving, we've seen another high. So one of the things that at least I believe is that Dogecoin and Bitcoin are kind of like connected. I'm going to put out this theory because, like, I mean, the crypto market space is so early for anybody to say, well, it's going to be like this, and this is true, and this is true. You can't really say that for an asset class that is just really essentially in its 15th year. And I'll say, the vast majority of, anything we understood for like year 4 or 5, you can just throw out. Most of that was just like pure, like, I don't know, some form of like pretty naive technical analysis. I think we're starting to get closer to something like where you can really start to put together some sort of like evidence and research for it. But definitely, from having studied Bitcoin as much as I have, having studied the mathematical side of Bitcoin, the recurring nature of how it rises, and then seeing that Dogecoin is perhaps the one that is like most like interconnected to it. All right. That's not where I originally planned to go. I wanted to go through, I wrote this Substack on Dogecoin yesterday. And I think it's got, the points that I think matter the most. Why does anybody really know about Bitcoin? About Dogecoin today? Well, one of the reasons is definitely Elon. And Elon, this is, I think, one of the original posts that he put up on Dogecoin of how he started to buy Dogecoin, which is that folks on the production lines at Tesla and at SpaceX, they were buying Doge. And they obviously weren't financial experts or Silicon Valley technologists. They'd obviously heard about Bitcoin, but whatever reason, they felt that Bitcoin's price was too high. They didn't understand it. Maybe it was too fancy, it's too complicated. For them, they wanted to be in something easy, something that obviously was cheaper. And hey, what is what's there not to like about about this cute I'm trying to find a picture of Doge. It's crazy how whatever. You guys get the point. Oh, here it is. Okay. Well, there's a lot of pictures of Doge. I mean, what's there not to like about, a Shiba Inu dog? I mean, they're super cute. I don't have a dog, but I understand they're very friendly. They're very sweet. What's not to like about it? And initially, when I put Doge into the portfolio when I was at Banyan Hill, it was really based on a pretty simple idea, which is that at the time, governments around the world were talking about banning Bitcoin. And one thing I noticed that nobody was planning or talking about banning Doge. And because you'd feel foolish, right? I mean, imagine like, you're some, like, I don't know, you're the SEC, you're the Federal Reserve, you're the Central Bank of India, you are the Central Bank of China. You're like, we need to stamp out this Dogecoin. People would laugh at them. So in some ways, it's kind of like it's sort of like a Trojan horse. It's kind of clever, like, because it is like seen as not very serious, not very threatening to anybody. Nobody is going to act to ban Dogecoin. And so as a result, it has been able to continue, propagate, kind of like gain mind share around the world. I mean, I can tell you that if you were to ask kids, for example, many kids probably know Bitcoin, but they don't. They probably like, we would know how to buy it, whatever, etc. But I'll say, like, certainly in America and probably across, like, I'd say most Western countries, or maybe even other countries, people know Doge. Why? Well, because the dog's cute, right? I mean, and what are you going to say? I mean, as my daughter would say, Doge is adorable. So my point in bringing all that up is that it's sort of like flies underneath the radar, right? I mean, and by flying underneath the radar, it's sort of like gaining people, like quietly. Like Bitcoin, there's all the serious stuff. Oh, we got the Bitcoin ETF, and we got MicroStrategy that is, building this Noah's Ark worth of Bitcoin. And there's BlackRock, which is like, it's like, hey, the stuff with Coinbase, and everybody's very serious. But Doge, it's kind of like flies underneath the radar, but 15 billion, folks. I mean, for something that was started as a joke. And if you go and look at financial history, monetary history, there are many innovations, there are many things that came about where there wasn't like some like incredibly serious purpose behind it. It started out maybe not as a joke, but started out as something that was like, like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. And then it continues and it continues, partly because it didn't threaten anybody. Nobody objected to it. And also like, and then so it passed underneath the radar, sat there, but it continued to gain people because something about it was quite simple, something about it was quite easy, something about it was quite attractive. And that's kind of like where we are with Doge. Well, one of the people I think that kind of like got it, and it goes back to what Elon said, which is that, you see, he says right there, he says, they aren't financial experts or Silicon Valley technologists. Now, in like the world of finance, we think that everything should be incredibly complicated. It should require some extremely serious explanation. You got to fill like a 30-page like investment report. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's like actually right. I mean, I think like for Doge, it gets at, which is that non-experts get it on some level, and they've been attracted enough to it to buy it, to hold it, and when they like have some financial need, to spend it. And they're not, the nature of it is that because it is not so serious, they're not going to put their life savings into it. But it's like a sort of like a understandable, simple, easy speculation that like they instinctively get. And I think that's what like Elon kind of like, this is what that post sort of like gets at, which is like everything else is kind of like hard, complicated. With Bitcoin. Okay, there's like, the halving, and there's the power law and all this stuff. With Doge, there's nothing. I mean, Doge is, as I covered it in this Substack, which I recommend you subscribe. I think we put out pretty interesting stuff. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see. Elon, I think, gets, which is that Doge has actual potential as a fiat currency. And I believe he's absolutely right. So, a fiat currency, for those who are unaware, simply means that it's not backed by anything. For example, the US dollar used to be on the gold standard. And then in the 1970s, we came off the gold standard. And the US dollar today is a fiat currency. I mean, it's not backed by anything. It's not backed by collateral, not gold, not like some fixed supply of whatever, some good, corn or money or anything like that. And you can issue as much of it as you want. There's no control to it. And Doge is the same. They can issue as much as they want. The other thing about a fiat currency that makes it like real, makes it something that you're going to keep, is that you got to be able to buy and sell it. And if you go and look on a day-to-day basis, you'll see that in this left-hand corner here, I'll make this a bit bigger so you can see. You see right here, volume 24 basis, $654 million per day. Dogecoin, people buy and sell $654 million of this supposed joke coin. 654 million. Multiply that times 365 days a week. I mean, we're talking about trillions of dollars changing hands in Dogecoin. In Dogecoin, yeah. So it may be a joke, but those numbers are not a joke. Those numbers are not a joke. I mean, that's very, very real, and that is also higher than most currencies. I mean, I looked this up on Google, and there are something like 180 currencies issued by countries around the world. I can tell you the vast majority of them do not have trading of $654 million per day. The vast majority. Sure, I mean, I mean, the US dollar, the Japanese yen, the euro, the Swiss franc, the Australian dollar, all the major currencies, sure, they have trillions of dollars. But once you get past that, there is like a sudden fall. And, most currencies might trade, I don't know, 50, 100 million a day. 600 million a day is pretty big. So it's got one of the things that makes it a legitimate currency, which is that you can buy and sell it. If you owned it, I mean, yeah, the price fluctuates, but the price fluctuates for the yen. The price fluctuates for the euro. The price fluctuates for the Australian dollar. I mean, currency prices fluctuate relative to whatever, your base is. Obviously, we think about everything in US dollars, but if you lived in India, I mean, the Indian currency, fluctuates by a lot against the US dollar and against the euro. So, I mean, yeah, it fluctuates, but it's liquid. In other words, you want to sell for whatever, yeah, you can sell. So that's important for fiat currency. It has to be something that people are willing to buy and sell in some serious quantities on a day-to-day basis. All right, the other thing about a fiat currency is that its price/value is dictated, by some mixture of confidence, some mixture of, I guess, whatever is going on in the world. I mean, at the particular moment, and then it's also dictated by how many units are issued. So you can't really tell from that chart, but since inception, Dogecoin has 146 billion units issued. So it starts out in 2014 at 146 billion issued. I don't really know what the exact number is, and I'm not sure if I got the conversion correct, but by my count, by looking at this from a source on the Federal Reserve, it seems like the money in circulation for dollars is, how much did I compute this to be? Something in the quadrillions, right? I mean, 2.4 quadrillion dollar units. In other words, that's out there. So there's a lot of dollars out there. Obviously, the audience for dollars at this point is significantly bigger than Doge, but Doge is, 10 years into the making. The dollar is like what? I mean, 100 years in the making, and, is the standard for lots of transactions around the world. Doge, on the other hand, is just getting going. But still, I mean, 10 years in, $15 billion worth of value being stored in Doge. I mean, I own some Doge. So, I mean, I know all the very serious people here will be like, Paul, you're losing it. I mean, how can you seriously think about Doge as a currency? Look, folks, I mean, it seems like ridiculous today, but, there was a time when people thought stocks were a joke. They were like, like, what do I really get when I buy a stock? Do I get 1% of the building? Do I get 1% of the railroad? Can I claim 1% of the cash that's there? No. I mean, and so when stocks first start to trade, the people who then owned mostly metals or however you stored your value, which were primarily, like I'd say, I mean, old days, I mean, primarily been metal, gold, maybe land, sheep, cows, the idea of storing wealth in a stock by like buying something like that just seemed like fantasy land, crazy talk, because you don't have any control. These are slightly different, but nonetheless, my point is that we think like everything that is today has always been, but from having read very widely on sort of like how things change through time, there's a lot of things that we take for granted today that we think are like completely acceptable, completely okay, like, and the only way that things could be, truthfully, in another time, they were seen as crazy innovations that only dumb, stupid people would ever like engage in. But today they are not just accepted, they're critical parts of the financial system. So you can dismiss this, but the idea that Doge can become a global fiat currency, it's not unthinkable. It's only unthinkable because, we're used to what we currently have, but we don't know what's going to happen in 5 years or in 10 years. Like, who would have imagined that another pretend currency issued by a piece of code, an algorithm, today would be worth whatever, what's Bitcoin worth? I mean, the market capitalization of Bitcoin is, looking at it, 1.25 trillion. Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin was as dismissed as Doge is today, but Bitcoin, $63,000 for one coin. And this is like, in 2009, if you were early, you bought it for less than $1. And, at every step along the way, pretty much I say like Bitcoin now has crossed that threshold where real serious money is going into it. We have an ETF. We now have two countries that have shown that they're willing to store it. We have El Salvador. We have the country of Bhutan in Asia. It's inevitable that someone else is going to come along and say like, oh well, we too have whatever, several hundred million or a few billion. But either way, Bitcoin was as dismissed as Doge is today, and Bitcoin is increasingly, for more and more people, becoming like on the verge of what I'd call mainstream acceptance. It's a place where people are beginning to store serious wealth. I mean, the ETFs have what, like 25-30 billion dollars in it, right? I mean, that's some serious wealth that's being put in there. So my point with here is that you can dismiss this idea, but I have no guarantees of being right. And if you want certainties, you leave your money in fiat in a savings account. There's risk, there's volatility, there's the potential of wrong. But if you're someone that is looking to make money, likes making money, and looking for a speculation, I mean, heck, I wish I bought Doge. Truthfully, it's a little hard to buy. Like, until Robinhood gave access to people, Doge. I mean, it was a little bit, I wanted to buy some earlier, but it was difficult to buy. Like, I mean, Coinbase didn't list Doge until fairly late. But I believe it's not too late. It's not too late. And then in the Substack, I also talk about like, well, what about Doge would make it sort of like get accepted more, right? I mean, one of the things that about Doge is just that, just like every Bitcoin and every Ether token, they're all recorded on the blockchain. So anytime you buy or sell, that is not something that, you got to be like, oh, did that go through? Did I get my confirmation? No. The moment the transaction happens, it's recorded on the blockchain. That's not true for dollars. I mean, try sending money today, which is that, I mean, if you send a wire, of course, there's like, you do it, you got to send all these different things. Like, I mean, I receive a wire from a friend, and he was like, what's your account number at Fidelity? And Fidelity uses some corresponding bank. So he's like, why are these two different? And then he's like, are you sure this is going to go through? It went through. It took something like 2 or 3 hours. There was no place when, like, at the moment that he sent it, to go and check on the blockchain. On the other hand, you send Doge. Yeah, the moment you send it, that's there. The moment it's received, it's recorded in the blockchain. Yeah, it's pretty much, yeah, provides you with verification. So like all the suspicion that you might have, if you were dealing with, someone that you didn't know, the blockchain resolves like all of these trust issues. So that's one extra tick for Doge that even the best fiat currency issued by a nation state, which is the US dollar, doesn't have. Second, which is highly relevant today, being that, we've gone through this extraordinary inflationary period, right? I mean, in 2020, the government decides to distribute like all the stimulus. 2021, they distribute even more stimulus. In 2020, the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates to zero, essentially like blasting the markets and the economy with huge amounts of money. Inflation gets to 9% at the peak. Why? Well, because everyone's like, how much money's in the system? I mean, how much are they doing? I mean, I've seen some crazy charts showing, M2 jumping by, I think, like double in the space of like 2 years. I mean, people say that's not true, but the 9% inflation going from 0 to 9% in the space of 2 years tells you that it probably was true. But nobody could really tell for sure. Why? Well, because there's no way to look. It's not like the Federal Reserve tells you, like, hey, by the way, the actual amount that we're currently pumping in real time is whatever, 1 trillion. But Doge is verifiable. Like, you want to see how much Doge is issued? Pretty much, on a real-time basis, you just go look on the blockchain. Heck, you can just keep coin market cap up on a daily basis, and you can see. So the amount of money that is issued is directly related to its scarcity and its quantity that is out there. Generally speaking, the more that is out there, the less valuable it is, and the less that is out there, the more valuable it is. So Doge, on a absolute like basis like that, like, I mean, 156 million units versus whatever the amount is, 2.4 quadrillion. Well, it's definitely more scarce than the US dollar. It's definitely more scarce than the US dollar. Then finally, another advantage of Doge is that it is dirt cheap to send around the world. I mean, I think like the vast majority of transactions are like, a few cents, like even for fairly large amounts of money, it's very low. Now, because Doge is also widely distributed, it's one of the few cryptocurrencies where since the founder never imagined that it would be worth anything, it didn't keep a lot. I mean, there's no like, Satoshi wallet with like 20, with like $5 billion worth of Doge. I think the largest single wallet that exists for Doge is like, I think it's like about $500 million. But because it was never expected to be anything, like nobody bothered to like be like, oh, I'm going to hoard it. And they wouldn't, because like, it was always supposed to have unlimited supply. So there was never any basis for hoarding it. But as a result, I mean, it's like no one has that much, no one dominates it, and nobody's hoarding it necessarily. But how can it go up? Why can it go up? Well, like anything else related to currency, I mean, it can go up because despite its potential for having unlimited supply, the demand can be much greater than supply. So if we go from, where, I mean, I think I saw a number say that something like 20% of the people who own crypto, it might be 25%, own Doge. So there's two ways it can go up. Number one, the number of people who own crypto increase, and then either, it just means like, well, 25% of that will probably come into Doge, but it's also possible the number of people who own crypto increase, and the number of people who own Doge also increase. And then as the population gets younger and they are more crypto friendly, this is what I think is going to happen. And I think this is why there is this relationship between Bitcoin and Doge, which is that Doge is becoming the fiat currency of the crypto world, and Bitcoin is the store of value. In other words, there is a point at which Bitcoin moons, and then people sort of when they come to spend it, sort of push some of it into Doge and keep it there, and that's sort of their spending account. And Bitcoin is the store of value account, and Doge is spending account. And that relationship, that process is just beginning to happen. Well, why? Well, because from 2009 to 2014, there was only Bitcoin, and Bitcoin didn't have so much money, and it was not very liquid that you could sell it. 2014 comes along, and this original fiat crypto comes along where there's potentially unlimited supply. Our market develops for it for all the different reasons we talked about, which is that they've got the picture of the cute dog. People, it's simple. There's no complications around it, versus understanding hash rates and halvings and all the things with Bitcoin. So people start to adopt it. It starts to be used in different communities. For example, any number of digital artists have been using Doge to trade and to buy and sell. So it gains acceptance and adoption in certain places. And then then in 2024, even after a extraordinary crash from 74 cents down to 11, it's still worth $15 billion. So what can Doge do in this next cycle? Because it's very clear, if you look at the relationship, there is definitely a relationship between Bitcoin and Doge. And the relationship is somewhat similar to Bitcoin and generally all altcoins, which is that Bitcoin moons, people start to take profits, and they start to push that money into all kinds of altcoins. But clearly, a significant amount of that also goes into Doge, into that second sort of category, for the same reasons why people got into it, which is that it's easy, it's simple to understand. And then obviously we have, these big price peaks. Is, of course, at high prices, everybody comes in all together. That's what causes the high prices. And then, of course, as people realize that there's not going to be a pump on top of the pump that they bought into. In other words, they were just too late. Obviously, it crashed out as all the people sell, but it still retains significant value relative to where it used to trade. And I think we'll see the same thing in the next cycle. And last week, I laid out my view, which is that we are closing in on the period when Bitcoin starts to surge higher. From everything I can see, I'd say the minimum price it surges to is 100,000. The maximum will be like 1 million, maybe a little bit more. And then it will go back and crash back to somewhere, probably, I don't know, if I were to guess, between 200,000 and 300,000. In that scenario, I mean, we're talking about Bitcoin prices going up by, even at the next, at the high, maybe 20 times from here, approximately, and at the low 5 to 6 times. So I suppose in the next run, where does Doge get to? Well, I mean, I theorize in my Substack that Doge gets to, I'll say, a low of $1, maybe a high of 3, and then maybe the crash is back to maybe $1.30, maybe $1.10, something like that, but it holds $1. That's my best guess. People who want guarantees do not apply, but if you want a speculation where I would say I have 70% confidence that the relationship between Bitcoin and Doge is real. And then I also say that given just how wild, pretty much so much of our world is, I mean, who could have predicted I mean, the idea of a pandemic, that is not like a true like black swan or unpredictable. But the after effects of it, the lockdown, the all the things that came after in financial markets. I mean, meme stock trading. I mean, GameStop like rocketing higher, AMC going higher. 15% of all investment accounts opened or have like existing today were open since 2020. That's a mind-blowing statistic. Um, I'm not willing to discount, Elon Musk, his support of Doge, or the fact that crypto is a real innovation, and there's going to be some expression of like of what we currently have. Like, I mean, my study of innovation is that like people think that like the future is going to be like uniquely different, but really what it is, like we copy the function that we had from whatever it was we were using before. So we need a fiat cryptocurrency. And history says that like, yeah, it's not going to be the currency from before. I mean, like, for example, people may have imagined that, uh, you know, um, um, once like we went from what? I mean, we had gold, then we have the gold standard, and then we had fiat, right? I mean, so these like all like you can see the interrelated, and now we have fiat and we have crypto. Makes sense that at least as an intermediate step, we're going to have some fiat crypto that is unique, individual to it, but has many of the same qualities, characteristics, capabilities of what we have. And I think like the market's saying just by the persistence of Doge that this is the one. Uh, in terms of fiat crypto, not store of value, not special purpose like Ethereum, which is for like financial transactions and smart contracts or specific to any particular purpose. In terms of just like a medium of exchange where you're not so concerned, about like, oh, I'm going to store up Dogecoin for the foreseeable future. Well, because there's no basis for it. It's potentially has unlimited supply, very different than Bitcoin. I mean, I'm repeating myself, but bottom line, most people are looking for the next meme coin that's going to go up 55,000%. You know what? Good luck. I mean, I would have never imagined that, truthfully, that Doge was ever going to happen. I would have never imagined that Shiba Inu was going to happen. And my reading of history is that you want to go with the leader that has the highest likelihood, highest probability of working out. Certainly, by chasing the next, you know, crazy coin, you can make maybe 55 million%, but you don't know what it is. It's going to probably come out of the blue, and maybe in this cycle it comes, maybe it doesn't. But what we can definitely see by the fact that people have been willing to continue to own, trade Dogecoin, and that, yeah, in 2024, yeah, with Bitcoin having a market capitalization of 1.2 trillion, it's still relevant. 650 million traded today. Yeah, I think as like, some small part of your crypto portfolio definitely deserves a place in my judgment, in my opinion. All right, let's go to some questions and comments today. Are you still? Hey, Paul. Hey, David. Wave Life Sciences. I think this we've sold out a long time ago. This does not look familiar. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different companies, I'm sure, that can have like a one-day thing. I mean, one of the things that I talked about in my Diamond Tier update is that we can see one thing happening in the markets, which is that the markets are definitely willing to take less risk than they did when interest rates were cut last time. So there's definitely like a slightly different market for innovation and growth stocks today than when interest rates were being cut in 2020. They've got to have like some near-term pathway. I'd say maybe 24, 36 months at most to revenue growth, or else the market is like, yeah, I don't think I really want to own this. And we're seeing that expressed fairly clearly. I'm just trying to look at Wave Life Sciences and looking at Wave Life. I mean, this is a fairly small company, yeah, with like, a pretty brutal past history. I don't really know the business well enough to really talk about it, but I know people want opinions on everything. But like, I mean, this is this is an IPO that's come from some time ago. That's like all the price history on Wave Life Sciences. Yeah, probably not for us at this point in time, but yeah, I mean that's definitely someone bidding it up. Maybe something that we would look at and see might be a worthwhile, but I don't know the business anymore, and so I will have to check into that. But thank you for asking. Anthony Perry says, I'm afraid Tesla is losing its first mover advantage on self-driving. To whom? I mean, yeah, there is nobody. I have not been in the Google Waymo taxis in San Francisco. I have been thinking of taking just like a flight just to try it and then get back on the plane and come back again. But those taxis are geo-fenced. Yeah, I mean, beyond city limits, they don't operate. So a Tesla, the full self-driving is designed to operate anywhere, right? I mean, it's not geofence. In other words, they actually use cameras like eyes, and they've built a neural network based on camera data coming in. They've trained the camera data to understand particular situations. So, it sees a stop sign and knows like, okay, from here you have to do something. So it's a neural network that's based to like actually deal with day-to-day data. So like if it sees like a cone, it knows it's a construction site. Yeah, there's nobody else that's there. There's nobody it's even close. So yeah, I'm not sure who who they're going to lose this first mover advantage to. So if you can tell me who you think they're going to move it to, I'm curious. Still hope that they can catch up because the number of cars can join the network. I don't know what you're talking about, truthfully. I mean, there's no neural network with more cars than Tesla. Everybody else has like, a few thousand. Tesla has like 1 million. So Pulverizer is a fan of Chinese stocks. Yeah, I don't know. I've never found, I mean, the basis for owning foreign stocks. Like, I mean, truthfully, Indian stocks. I mean, I saw a crazy chart yesterday showing that if you'd owned Indian stocks for the last 15 years, you far outperformed Chinese stocks. So, but China gets all the attention because there are these big names like Alibaba, etc. But as a market, India has done far better than China. I think you can compare whatever the two indices are. I know with India, it's the either Sensex or the Nifty 50. With China, I forget what the index is, but and we have we have one Chinese stock and we have a couple of Japanese stocks. We might add an Indian stock as well here or there if we find good opportunity. Steve says, any news positive or negative on STEM? Well, the stock's in like complete, like just being destroyed. There's nothing changes from, remember, stock prices change every day, but the businesses are much harder to change, right? I mean, the same scenario when last time you asked me, they need to cut costs. And then their underlying, like the solar business has been through a very tough time. And they have to sort of like go through that bottom, but there's nothing that's changed. Clearly, someone who owns the stock wants out, and the nature of the stock market is no different than anything else. Like, I mean, what do you do when you don't want a stock in your portfolio? Do you sit there and calculate and say, okay, the stock is worth 32 and I'm only going to sell at 32? No, that's not the way you operate, and that's not the way portfolio managers operate. They're like, I own this dog, I want it out before year end, and then you just sell it until it's gone. If there's no market for it, in other words, nobody wants to buy it. And remember, we only want to buy stocks that are high and rising. So of course, I mean, it just gets marked down until there's finally a buyer at some price. Either the original market maker is like, okay, this is a price from which I can induce a bull market, a scarcity driven bull market. Now, this because I know the big seller, they represent such a large part of the float. I've taken it all in. I control the market from here at this low price, and now they can mark it up. But other than that, it's got to be based on the business. And at present, I mean, their business is still like struggling because the overall business has been in struggle mode. And then there's the after effects of having been like a company that was born during zero interest rates, which is that they're overbuilt. They imagined that investors would be there to give them money endlessly, and they still haven't really cut costs sufficiently to be like, okay, we can make money based on the business that's coming in. And they probably need to cut some projects and stuff that's out there, but it's still in struggle bus mode. I know there's a lot of people very attached to that stock, and this and Momentous, another one, which both these stocks are destroyed. Somebody wrote me on the Substack, why do I keep holding these dogs? You know what? Because the underlying business has promise. There's a lot of people attached to it, and we've seen turnarounds happen. I mean, stocks can turn either because the business is there, or else somebody come a takeover, and maybe we don't get all our money back, but they have a genuine potential for a business, which is that they have this Athena software that, from my understanding, is actually the leader in coordinating, distributing energy resources. Can they turn this into a profitable cash flow business? To be seen. Clearly, somebody right now doesn't want to own it, and they're willing to crush the stock. Yeah, called stable coin. Yeah, stable coin is simply a representation of the US dollar. So that is not it doesn't have its own, supply characteristics. I mean, they can issue stable coins. I mean, stable coins are backed by, Tether and USDC are backed by T-bills, etc. But, the amount of dollars sitting behind there is still unlimited. So, I mean, they're not like unique by themselves. I mean, Doge has its own supply and demand characteristics that are unique to it. It doesn't represent the dollar. So, yeah, I mean, what my view on NVIDIA is, which is that this is a cyclical stock. And as I've said again and again, cyclical stocks, you buy when they look like they're about to go bankrupt, and you sell when everybody's fat and happy and thinks they're going to go to the moon. And I think if you look at a chart of NVIDIA, I think you can see where we are in that kind of analysis. What do I think of Aerodrome? I don't know. You keep asking me companies that I don't know. I don't even think this is a publicly traded company, is it? Let's see. Aerodrome doesn't come up on anything that I'm looking at. I think I think you're the same one that asked me about Energy X and Liquid Piston, and then I was browsing on the internet last week, and I saw an ad for, I think, Liquid Piston. So of course I went and looked. It's a private company, and I just want to tell you, which is that there was a time when my publisher at Banyan Hill was like, "Hey, so and so publisher is having great success selling newsletters for private companies." So I went and showed him, the long-term track record of private companies. I mean, it's horrific. Something like out of like every 100 companies, like you can expect like 1 to 2 to be successful. So yeah, the idea of like getting in early in making a killing is great. And I can tell you, I have invested through two like these like seed-based companies, and I can tell you I've lost pretty much all my money, right? Only one company was successful, right? I think I put my money in something like 30 different companies, and one was successful. Most of them have disappeared without trace. I mean, they were all, of course, very communicative right after I made the investment, but after that, I mean, 2, 3 years out, gone. One company that is actually in the new energy space. It's called Clean Capital. That's my single success from like 30 or 40 or 50 private investments. Single one. So I would say your chances of making money with these private companies are pretty low. Yeah, I mean, these are. I mean, one of the things that I have started to now like classify, which is that many companies that trade in the stock market are not really they're publicly traded venture capital, and Momentous belongs in that category. And what is publicly traded venture capital? In other words, they don't generate sufficient cash flow even to partially support their operations. They depend on investors to continue to give them money. That's no different than a private company, a venture capital company that has some business, but like they continually need infusions of capital to survive. And Momentous and any number of companies that were birthed in like the 16-year ZERP period belong in that category. And now with interest rates significantly higher, capital allocation preferences significantly different, it's a different world. It's a different world. And Momentous, the only thing I can say is that they do have a genuine, actual piece of revolutionary technology, which is like, yeah, a water-based space engine. Can they make a business around it? To be seen. To be seen. Yeah. I mean, my general view is like in a world where we are not going back to 0% interest rates, you want to bring your risk parameters in rather than go out. That's what we're doing at ATG portfolios. Like, for example, between today and yesterday, I've been like really going through like our clinical stage biotechs, which are the riskiest things. And generally, when the Federal Reserve cuts, these pump. That was true in 2002. That was true in 2009. But in this occasion, I actually see like, yeah, there's no response. So this cycle is different because we're in a rising interest rate cycle. And I would say like the further you push out in terms of the risk, the lower the likelihood of success, which is quite different than, if you're going through a period when interest rates keep going down, where like, hey, you can like push out on the risk curve more and more because, you're getting closer and closer to zero, but we're on the other side. So I'm not looking for more risk. I'm actually looking for slightly less risk. I want businesses. I'm looking for higher probability rather than higher return because yeah, the risk environment and the interest rate environment, which dictates that, has changes. But thank you for the suggestion. Aerodrome is a crypto, and so is Suya. I mean, yeah, I'll say the same thing. I think like the next crypto cycle, people, of course, are going to, think that the last cycle is going to dictate what happens in the future cycle. And each cycle is different. The different things about this cycle is the number one is that the dominance of Bitcoin is real. And it has gotten more of the capital that's there. So as a percentage of new money coming in, more is going to go into established coins that have some express purpose. The crypto market in 2020 and 2021 was a little bit more immature. There was obviously a huge flood of liquidity pushed into the markets by the government through stimulus checks and by the Federal Reserve by instantly cutting to zero. We don't have any of that. I think it's a low percentage bet to think that we are going to have a similar crypto bull market in this run than what we experienced in 2021. My bet is that this crypto market will be dominated more by Bitcoin, more by established coins, and also more by actual coins that have some particular utility and purpose. So that's my view of this. All right. We're nearing the hour mark. I should check out. I think you're talking about the X account run by Raul, but or maybe this is a crypto coin. I have not been keeping up with new coins my view again is that like I want to push inward, and where like hey, there are now like any number of companies that have matured out from the huge wave of like companies that were seeded during ZIRP, during the zero interest rate policy. And now, there's been like a whittling down, and that is true as well for crypto. So for me, I think pretty much if you own Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, I think like those are like three, very high probability, probably like in that order. High probability for Bitcoin, slightly less high probability for Ethereum, slightly lower for Doge, and then from there, they're pretty much like our silver tier is where like I put like our highest probability bets now, because the environment has changed from when I was at Banyan Hill. It's now a rising interest rate environment on a very long-term basis. On a cycle basis, even though they're cutting rates, we're not going to go back to zero. Right? That's not a possibility. Why? Well, because inflation is not at 2%. Just imagine like the Federal Reserve lifted interest rates from 0 to 5.3%, right? That rate of increase, and it happened very fast. From March of 2022 to July 2023, and they didn't cause like a major recession. They didn't cause like a big crash. Sure, in 2022, the S&P dropped by whatever, I think 28%, but it wasn't 56% like in 2008. And we didn't see unemployment spike. We've not seen anything. In other words, the amount of money that they pushed out was so great that even 5.3% couldn't get people to, it couldn't suck up all that liquidity. So we're not going to have 0% interest rates. I theorize that we'll get back to 2.5. I would say maybe 3, but 3 is way higher than 0%. So that confirms that we are now in a rising interest rate cycle that runs. From my study, it goes about like 40, 45 years, something in that range. In that scenario, you have to start changing how you allocate or what you allocate to. So I still think there's a lot of money to be made because 3% is not a very high rate historically. Even 5% is not a very high rate historically. However, if you are a business and you're an investment that predicates on 0% interest rates, well, 3% is a very high rate and 5%. So it's a very high rate. Pulverized says, thanks, appreciate. Gotta do an Indian ETF to DCA into right now. Yeah, I wish I could see the chart, but because it's really, really instructive given how much hype there was on Chinese stocks over pretty much any other stocks, but I can't find the X post. Thank you, LMFG. I'm very positive on blockchain technology, and I think that that's one of the changes that we're going to see in this crypto cycle, which is that it's so hard to point to some actual implementation of blockchain technology that you can say, oh, well, that's scaled up. Blockchain technology is about like where EVs were, when I put Tesla into the portfolio in 2018. Most people are like, they remember they were just beginning to go for their first mainstream car with the Model 3. They had to go through production hell and all these things. And now, I mean, EVs are 8% market share. Some people still think they're a fad, but that's fine. We're about to go through an S-curve adoption because like the cost of an average EV is now below an internal combustion engine. So that calculus means like, you'll see adoption rise. But we can't really point yet to blockchain technology sort of like taking market share from existing technology, which is what? Well, it's the old school banking legacy system. But the banks are in trouble. They don't have enough capital. I laid this out in my Substack last week. So that's the base case for the Ethereum and DeFi coins there. All right. Going over the top, over 1 hour and 5 minutes. Thanks all for attending this live stream. We'll see you again next Tuesday at 12:30. If you're not a subscriber, ATG Digital, $9.99 per month for the silver tier, and up from there. Thank you all for attending. This is Paul saying bye.